There was a time when Earth was ruled by creatures so vast, so powerful, and so diverse that they shaped every corner of the planet. Dinosaurs walked across endless landscapes, filled the skies, and moved through ancient waters, forming a world that existed long before human memory. We understand it today. That world came to an end, marking a turning point in the history of Lithian Earth. Yet, as one begins to reflect on this moment, an interesting question emerges. What if that ending never happened? What if the extinction event that reshaped the planet never occurred, and dinosaurs continued to evolve, adapt, and exist alongside the changing Earth? As we consider this possibility, it becomes clear that the world we know today would be entirely different, not only in appearance, but in the way life itself developed over millions of years. The absence of that single moment of disruption would mean that the balance of life would continue along a completely different path, one where ancient species were not replaced, but transformed over time. As one imagines this alternate Earth, it becomes evident that dinosaurs would not remain the same as they were in the past. Just as all life evolves in response to its environment, these creatures would have continued to adapt to shifting climates, changing landscapes, and new challenges. Some may have grown smaller, others more specialized, while new forms would likely emerge, shaped by millions of years of gradual change. The forests, plains, and oceans of this world would reflect those changes, becoming environments where dinosaurs still played a central role. At the same time, it is important to consider how the continuation of dinosaurs would influence the development of other forms of life. The rise of mammals, including humans, was closely connected to the disappearance of dominant reptilian species. Without that space being created, the path of evolution may have unfolded very differently. As we reflect on this, it becomes evident that the presence of dinosaurs could have limited, altered, or even prevented the emergence of species that now define the modern world. The skies, once again, might be filled with large flying reptiles, adapted over time into new and unfamiliar forms. The land could be dominated by creatures that have evolved far beyond their ancient ancestors, while the oceans might hold species that continue an unbroken line from a distant past. As this develops, one begins to understand that this is not simply a world where dinosaurs survive, but a world where the entire direction of life has changed. As we move forward in this exploration, we will consider how such a world might look, how ecosystems would function, and how life would adapt across millions of years without the interruption that reshaped our planet. In doing so, it becomes possible to imagine not just an alternate past, but an entirely different present, one where the age of dinosaurs never truly ended. Before we begin, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Hidden History of the Earth, and let me know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Every story, every memory, and every place matters, and together we keep history alive. Now let's begin. Chapter 1. A world still ruled by giants. As one begins to imagine a world where dinosaurs never went extinct, it becomes evident that the most important change would not simply be their continued presence, but the absence of the event that reshaped the entire course of life on Earth. The extinction event, which in our known history marked the end of the age of dinosaurs, created space for new forms of life to rise, particularly mammals, which would eventually lead to the development of humans. Without this moment of disruption, the balance of life would have remained centered around reptilian dominance, and the evolutionary path of the planet would have followed a completely different direction. As we reflect on this alternate timeline, it becomes clear that the ecosystems of Earth would not have undergone the same rapid shift that allowed smaller, less dominant species to expand and diversify. Instead, the existing hierarchy of life would have continued, with dinosaurs maintaining their position at the top of the food chain, shaping the environment around them in ways that would influence all other forms of life. The continents, still shifting slowly over millions of years, would provide changing landscapes, but these changes would be experienced by creatures that had already established dominance long before. As one considers this continuity, it becomes apparent that dinosaurs would not remain unchanged, but would evolve alongside these shifting environments, adapting to new climates, terrain, and ecological pressures. Some species may have become smaller, more efficient, or more specialized, while others may have grown even larger, taking advantage of stable ecosystems that allowed them to thrive without interruption. The forests of this world would likely look different, shaped by the feeding patterns and movement of large herbivorous dinosaurs, which would influence the growth and distribution of plant life. As we reflect on this interaction, it becomes evident that vegetation itself would evolve in response to these pressures, creating a feedback loop where plant and animal life continuously shaped one another. The absence of a mass extinction event also means that the process of evolution would remain more gradual, without the sudden loss of dominant species forcing rapid adaptation among survivors. As one considers this slower progression, it becomes clear that ecosystems would develop in a more continuous and stable manner, allowing for the refinement of existing relationships rather than the creation of entirely new ones. The skies, land, and oceans would all reflect this continuity, each filled with species that trace their lineage back through an unbroken chain of evolution. As this develops, one begins to understand that this world would feel both ancient and advanced at the same time, with creatures that originated in the distant past but have evolved over millions of years into forms that are both familiar and entirely new. The idea of dinosaurs as static, unchanging creatures is replaced with the understanding that they would be dynamic participants in an ongoing evolutionary process, constantly adapting to the world around them. As we continue to imagine this Earth, it becomes evident that the absence of extinction isn't simply about survival, but about continuity, where life builds upon itself without interruption, creating a world that is deeply connected to its past while still moving forward into the future. As we continue to explore this uninterrupted world, it becomes important to consider how the absence of extinction would influence not only the dominant species, but the entire structure of ecosystems across the planet, creating environments that are both stable and highly developed over long periods of time. Without the sudden removal of dinosaurs, the ecological roles they occupied would remain filled, leaving little opportunity for other groups of animals to expand in the same way they did in our known history. As one considers this limitation, it becomes evident that mammals, which in our timeline rose to prominence after the extinction event, would likely remain small, less diverse, and confined to specific niches within the environment. These creatures might continue to exist in the shadows of larger species, adapting to survive alongside them rather than replacing them. As we reflect on this, it becomes clear that the presence of dominant reptilian species would shape the evolution of all other life, influencing which traits are advantageous and which are not. The competition for resources, space, and survival would be defined by a world where large, powerful creatures maintain control over the landscape, forcing smaller organisms to develop strategies that allow them to coexist rather than compete directly. As one considers these strategies, it becomes apparent that life would evolve in ways that emphasize avoidance, specialization, and adaptation to specific environments. Some species may develop behaviors that allow them to remain hidden, while others may adapt to conditions that are less favorable to larger predators, such as underground environments or dense vegetation. As this develops, one begins to understand that the structure of ecosystems would be shaped by a balance between dominance and adaptation, where different forms of life find ways to exist within the constraints imposed by larger species. The oceans, too, would reflect this continuity, with marine reptiles and other ancient lineages continuing to evolve without interruption, creating a marine environment that remains closely connected to its prehistoric origins. As we reflect on this, it becomes evident that the entire planet would feel like an extension of the distant past, where the boundaries between ancient and modern life are blurred. The climate, influenced by long-term geological and atmospheric changes, would continue to shift over time, and dinosaurs would adapt to these changes in ways that allow them to survive across a wide range of environments. As one considers the impact of these adaptations, it becomes clear that dinosaurs would not be limited to the environments we associate with them today, but would expand into new regions, developing forms suited to colder climates, higher altitudes, or more varied ecosystems. The idea of a single age of dinosaurs would no longer apply, as their presence would extend across multiple eras, each defined by new adaptations and evolving forms. As we continue to reflect on this world, it becomes evident that the absence of extinction would result in a planet where life is deeply interconnected through an unbroken evolutionary history, creating ecosystems that are both complex and stable. The dominance of dinosaurs would not prevent change, but would guide it, shaping the direction of life in ways that are both predictable and unexpected. As one considers this, it becomes clear that this alternate Earth is not simply a continuation of the past, but a transformation of it, where ancient life continues to evolve and redefine itself over millions of years, creating a world that is both familiar in its origins and entirely different in its present form. As one begins to consider how evolution would unfold in a world where dinosaurs never went extinct, it becomes evident that the absence of a sudden, global disruption would allow life to continue developing in a steady and uninterrupted manner, shaped not by catastrophic change, but by gradual adaptation over immense periods of time. In our known history, the extinction event created a sharp break in the evolutionary timeline, forcing surviving species to adapt quickly to new conditions. But in this alternate world, that break never occurs, and instead, life continues along a continuous path where each generation builds upon the last without interruption. As we reflect on this idea, it becomes clear that dinosaurs would not remain fixed in their ancient forms, but would evolve in response to changing climates, shifting continents, and evolving ecosystems, just as all life does. The image of dinosaurs as large, slow-moving creatures locked in the past begins to fade, replaced by a vision of highly adapted, diverse species that have changed over millions of years, becoming more efficient, more specialized, and more suited to their environments. As one considers this ongoing process, it becomes evident that some dinosaur species may have become smaller and more agile, adapting to environments where speed and flexibility offer advantages, while others may have retained or even expanded their size in regions where resources remain abundant. The diversity of forms would likely increase over time, as different environments encourage different adaptations, leading to a wide range of species that occupy various ecological roles. As we reflect on this diversification, it becomes clear that the evolutionary pressure in this world would not come from sudden extinction, but from ongoing competition, environmental change, and the need to adapt to specific conditions. The forests, plains, and coastal regions would all serve as arenas for this gradual evolution, each offering unique challenges that shape the development of species over time. As one considers the interaction between dinosaurs and their environment, it becomes apparent that plant life would also evolve in response to constant pressure from herbivorous species, developing defenses, growth patterns, or chemical properties that influence how they are consumed. This interaction creates a continuous cycle of adaptation, where both plant and animal life influence one another, driving the evolution of increasingly complex ecosystems. As this develops, one begins to understand that evolution in this world would not be defined by replacement, but by refinement, where existing species become more advanced rather than being replaced by entirely new groups. The absence of large-scale extinction events also suggests that biodiversity would develop in a more layered and continuous way, with ancient lineages persisting alongside newer adaptations, creating ecosystems that contain a deep sense of history within them. As we reflect on this continuity, it becomes evident that the world would feel more connected to its past, with fewer abrupt changes and more gradual transitions between different forms of life. The idea of evolutionary ages would become less distinct, as the boundaries between them blur into a continuous progression of change. As one considers this, it becomes clear that this world would not be defined by dramatic shifts, but by steady transformation, where life evolves in response to long-term trends rather than sudden events. The oceans, skies, and land would all reflect this pattern, each filled with species that have adapted over time to become highly suited to their environments. As we continue to explore this uninterrupted evolution, it becomes evident that the absence of extinction would create a world where life is not only diverse, but deeply interconnected through a continuous and unbroken evolutionary history, shaping a planet that evolves smoothly rather than in sudden leaps. As we continue to reflect on this uninterrupted path of evolution, it becomes important to consider how the absence of extinction would influence not only the forms that life takes, but the pace and direction of evolutionary change itself, creating a world where adaptation is driven by consistency rather than disruption. In such a world, evolutionary pressure would arise from long-term environmental shifts, such as gradual climate change, continental drift, and the slow transformation of ecosystems, rather than sudden events that force rapid adaptation. As one considers this steady pressure, it becomes evident that species would have more time to develop specialized traits, allowing for a level of refinement that might not occur in a world shaped by frequent disruptions. Dinosaurs, in particular, would likely evolve into a wide range of forms that are highly adapted to specific environments, with some species becoming more efficient in movement, others more effective in feeding strategies, and still others better suited to surviving in challenging conditions. As we reflect on this specialization, it becomes clear that the diversity of dinosaurs would extend far beyond what we understand from the fossil record, creating a world filled with creatures that are both familiar in origin and entirely new in appearance. The interaction between species would also become more complex, as long-term coexistence encourages the development of intricate relationships within ecosystems. As one considers these relationships, it becomes apparent that competition would still play a key role in shaping evolution, but it would do so in a more stable and continuous manner, allowing ecosystems to maintain balance while still evolving over time. Some species may become highly specialized predators, while others develop advanced methods of avoiding predation, leading to a dynamic but stable system where each organism plays a role in maintaining ecological balance. As this develops, one begins to understand that the absence of extinction does not eliminate change, but transforms it into a slower, more predictable process that unfolds over millions of years. The role of environmental change remains significant, as shifts in temperature, sea levels, and atmosphere composition continue to influence the direction of evolution. But these changes occur gradually, allowing species to adapt over time rather than being forced into sudden transformation. As we reflect on this gradual adaptation, it becomes evident that the world would be characterized by a sense of continuity, where each stage of evolution builds upon the previous one without interruption. The presence of ancient lineages alongside more recently evolved forms creates ecosystems that are rich in history, where the past is not replaced but integrated into the present. As one considers this integration, it becomes clear that the world would feel more layered and complex, with a greater diversity of forms coexisting within the same environment. The absence of a major extinction event also suggests that evolutionary innovation would take different forms, focusing more on refinement and specialization rather than the rapid emergence of entirely new groups. As we continue to explore this idea, it becomes evident that the world of uninterrupted evolution would be one of deep continuity, where life evolves steadily over time, shaped by long-term trends rather than sudden events, creating a planet that is both stable and constantly changing in subtle and meaningful ways. As one begins to consider how ecosystems would function in a world where dinosaurs never went extinct, it becomes evident that the balance of life would be shaped by their continued dominance, creating a system where large, powerful species remain at the center of environmental influence while smaller organisms adapt around them. In our known history, the disappearance of dinosaurs allowed mammals and other groups to expand into roles that were previously unavailable, but in his alternate world, those roles would remain occupied, resulting in ecosystems that are structured very differently. As we reflect on this, it becomes clear that the presence of dominant dinosaur species would influence not only the distribution of life, but also the behavior and evolution of all other organisms within the system. Large herbivorous dinosaurs, for example, would continue to shape plant life through their feeding habits, consuming vast amounts of vegetation and influencing which plants are able to survive and reproduce. As one considers this interaction, it becomes apparent that plant life would evolve in response to constant pressure, developing defenses such as tougher structures, faster growth cycles, or chemical deterrents that reduce the impact of herbivory. This ongoing interaction between plants and herbivores creates a dynamic system where both sides continuously adapt to one another, driving the evolution of increasingly complex relationships. At the same time, large carnivorous dinosaurs would maintain their role as apex predators, influencing the behavior and distribution of other animals within the ecosystem. As we reflect on the presence of these predators, it becomes evident that their dominance would create a landscape where survival depends on awareness, movement, and adaptation, encouraging other species to develop strategies that allow them to avoid predation. Some organisms may evolve to become faster or more agile, while others develop camouflage or behaviors that reduce their visibility within the environment. As one considers these adaptations, it becomes clear that the balance of life would be maintained through a network of interactions where each species plays a role in the larger system. The concept of ecological balance in this world is not one of equality, but of stability, where dominant species exert a strong influence while other organisms adapt to coexist within the constraints they create. As this develops, one begins to understand that ecosystems would not be static, but constantly adjusting in response to changes in population, environment, and behavior. The presence of large dinosaurs would also influence the physical structure of the environment, as their movement across landscapes could alter terrain, create pathways, and affect the distribution of resources such as water and vegetation. As we reflect on this impact, it becomes evident that these creatures would act as agents of environmental change, shaping the world around them in ways that extend beyond their immediate needs. The interaction between land, water, and life would create a system where physical and biological processes are closely linked, each influencing the other over time. As one considers this interconnected system, it becomes clear that the world would be defined by a balance that is both dynamic and enduring, where the dominance of dinosaurs does not prevent diversity, but shapes it in specific ways. The absence of extinction allows this balance to develop over long periods, creating ecosystems that are deeply rooted in their history while still capable of adapting to change. As we continue to reflect on this world, it becomes evident that the balance of life under dinosaur rule would be complex, interconnected, and constantly evolving, shaped by the interactions between species and their environment over millions of years. As we continue to explore this balance of life, it becomes important to consider how stability and change would coexist within ecosystems dominated by dinosaurs, creating a world where long-term continuity allows for both resilience and gradual transformation. The absence of a mass extinction event means that ecosystems would not be reset or reorganized in the dramatic ways seen in our timeline, but would instead develop through a process of steady adjustment, where changes occur slowly and are integrated into the existing system. As one considers this gradual process, it becomes evident that ecosystems would become highly refined over time, with each species occupying a specific role that contributes to the overall balance of the environment. This refinement would allow for a level of efficiency and stability that might not be possible in a world shaped by frequent disruptions, as organisms adapt not only to their environment, but to the presence and behavior of other species within the system. As we reflect on this interconnectedness, it becomes clear that the relationships between species would become more complex, with each interaction contributing to the overall structure of the ecosystem. The presence of dominant dinosaurs would continue to influence these relationships, but their role would be part of a larger system rather than the sole defining factor. As one considers this broader perspective, it becomes apparent that the balance of life would depend on the interaction of many different elements, including climate, geography, and the availability of resources. The gradual changes in these factors over time would encourage ongoing adaptation, allowing ecosystems to remain stable while still evolving in response to new conditions. As this develops, one begins to understand that stability does not mean a lack of change, but rather a balance between continuity and adaptation, where systems are able to adjust without collapsing. The influence of dinosaurs within this system would extend beyond their immediate interactions, as their presence would shape the evolution of other species in subtle but significant ways. Smaller organisms, for example, might develop specialized behaviors or physical traits that allow them to thrive in environments where larger species dominate, creating niches that support a wide range of life. As we reflect on these niches, it becomes evident that diversity would still flourish in this world, even if it takes different forms than those we see today. The oceans, skies, and land would all contribute to this balance, each containing ecosystems that are influenced by the presence of dominant species, while also supporting a variety of smaller organisms. As one considers the global scale of these interactions, it becomes clear that the Earth would function as a unified system, where changes in one region could influence conditions in another, creating a network of interconnected environments. The absence of extinction allows this network to develop over long periods, resulting in ecosystems that are both resilient and deeply interconnected. As we continue to reflect on this world, it becomes evident that the balance of life under dinosaur rule would not be fragile, but enduring, shaped by millions of years of continuous adaptation and interaction. The dominance of dinosaurs would guide the direction of evolution, but it would not limit the potential for diversity or change, instead creating a world where life evolves within a stable yet dynamic framework, allowing ecosystems to thrive while continuously adapting to the shifting conditions of the planet. Chapter 2. A Different Path for Life. As one begins to consider the long-term consequences of dinosaurs never going extinct, it becomes evident that one of the most profound differences in this alternate world would be the uncertain path of human existence, or perhaps the complete absence of it altogether. In our known history, the extinction of dinosaurs created ecological space that allowed mammals to expand, diversify, and eventually evolve into more complex forms, leading to the emergence of primates and, much later, humans. Without this critical moment of opportunity, the evolutionary path of mammals would likely remain limited, confined to smaller roles within ecosystems dominated by large reptilian species. As we reflect on this possibility, it becomes clear that mammals would still exist, but their development would follow a very different trajectory, shaped by the constant presence of dominant dinosaurs that control access to resources, territory, and ecological influence. These mammals might remain small, nocturnal, and highly adaptive in specific niches, developing traits that allow them to survive without directly competing with larger species. As Sohn considers this constrained evolution, it becomes evident that the rise of large, intelligent mammals would be far less likely, as the environmental pressures that encouraged such development in our timeline would not exist in the same way. The absence of open ecological space would limit the opportunities for mammals to experiment with new forms and behaviors, keeping them within roles that prioritize survival over expansion. As we reflect on this limitation, it becomes apparent that the conditions required for the evolution of human-like intelligence may never fully develop, as the pressures that drove cognitive complexity in our timeline were closely linked to the changing environments and opportunities created after the extinction event. The presence of dominant dinosaurs would shape the environment in ways that discourage the rise of large, ground-dwelling mammals, forcing them to remain hidden or specialized in ways that do not support the development of advanced social structures or tool use. As one considers the importance of these factors, it becomes clear that the emergence of humans is not simply a matter of time, but the result of a specific set of conditions that may not be replicated in this alternate world. The forests, plains, and other environments that supported early human evolution in our timeline would likely be occupied by dinosaur species, leaving little room for mammals to expand into those spaces. As this develops, one begins to understand that the absence of extinction would not only preserve the dominance of dinosaurs, but actively shape the direction of evolution in a way that limits the potential for certain forms of life to emerge. The idea of intelligence, therefore, becomes uncertain in this world, as it is not guaranteed to develop in the same way or within the same groups of organisms. As we reflect on this uncertainty, it becomes evident that the Earth could remain a planet where intelligence, as we understand it, is either rare, differently expressed, or entirely absent. The absence of humans would also mean the absence of human-driven changesto the environment, resulting in a world that evolves solely through natural processes rather than technological or cultural influence. As one considers this, it becomes clear that the Earth would remain more closely aligned with its natural state, shaped by geological and biological forces rather than human intervention. The overall picture that emerges is one of a world where the path life diverges significantly from our own, leading to an Earth that is both familiar in its natural processes and entirely different in its outcomes. As we continue to explore this possibility, it becomes important to consider not only the limitations placed on mammals, but also the broader implications for intelligence and complex behavior in a world still dominated by dinosaurs, creating a scenario where the development of advanced cognition may follow an entirely different path. While mammals in this world may remain small and constrained in their evolutionary potential, it does not necessarily mean that intelligence would fail to emerge altogether, but rather that it might arise in unexpected ways, potentially within groups of organisms that are not typically associated with higher levels of cognition in our timeline. As one considers this alternative, it becomes evident that some dinosaur species, particularly those already showing signs of behavioral complexity, could continue to evolve in ways that support greater awareness, problem-solving, and interaction with their environment. Over millions of years, these traits could develop further, leading to species that possess forms of intelligence different from, but perhaps comparable to, those seen in mammals. As we reflect on this possibility, it becomes clear that intelligence is not limited to a single evolutionary path, but can emerge under the right conditions in a variety of forms. The continued dominance of dinosaurs would create environments where certain traits, such as coordination, communication, and environmental awareness, become increasingly important, potentially encouraging the development of more complex nervous systems. As one considers the role of these traits, it becomes apparent that intelligence in this world might be expressed in ways that are closely tied to survival within a dinosaur-dominated ecosystem, rather than in the development of tools or technology. The idea of advanced civilizations, as we understand them, becomes uncertain, as the environmental and evolutionary pressures that supported human development may not exist in the same way. As we reflect on this, it becomes evident that intelligence does not necessarily lead to technological advancement, but can exist as a means of navigating complex environments and social interactions. The ecosystems of this world would continue to evolve without human influence, maintaining a balance shaped by natural processes rather than artificial ones. As one considers the absence of human activity, it becomes clear that the planet would remain in a more stable and continuous state, free from the rapid changes associated with industrialization, urbanization, and technological development. The landscapes would be defined by natural forces, with forests, plains, and oceans shaped by the interaction of climate, geology, and life. As this develops, one begins to understand that this world, while lacking human presence, would not be empty or lacking in complexity, but instead filled with forms of life that have evolved along a different path. The absence of humans does not diminish the richness of this world, but rather highlights the diversity of possible outcomes in the history of life. As we continue to reflect on this alternate Earth, it becomes evident that the question of human existence is not simply about whether we would exist, but about how the entire direction of evolution would shift in our absence, creating a world that is both deeply connected to its past and entirely different in its present form. As one begins to imagine how dinosaurs might exist in what we would consider the modern world, it becomes evident that their presence would not simply resemble the past brought forward in time, but rather a continuation of evolution that has shaped them into forms adapted to present-day conditions. Over tens of millions of years, these creatures would have responded to shifting climates, changing vegetation, and evolving ecosystems, gradually transforming into species that may look very different from their ancient ancestors while still maintaining certain recognizable traits. As we reflect on this long passage of time, it becomes clear that dinosaurs would not remain confined to the environments we associate with them, such as dense prehistoric forests or warm tropical regions, but would instead expand into a wide range of habitats across the planet. Some species might adapt to colder climates, developing insulating features or behaviors that allow them to survive in regions with seasonal changes, while others may thrive in open plains, coastal areas, or mountainous terrain. As one considers this adaptability, it becomes evident that dinosaurs would likely occupy many of the ecological roles that mammals and other animals fill in our world today, shaping the structure of ecosystems in ways that feel both familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. The idea of modern landscapes populated by evolved dinosaurs introduces a sense of contrast, where environments we recognize are inhabited by creatures that have followed a completely different evolutionary path. As we reflect on this contrast, it becomes apparent that the presence of dinosaurs would influence everything from vegetation patterns to animal behavior, creating ecosystems that are deeply shaped by their continued dominance. Herbivorous dinosaurs, for example, would continue to play a major role in shaping plant life, grazing on vegetation and influencing which species are able to grow and spread. As one considers this interaction, it becomes clear that plant evolution would be closely tied to the feeding habits of these animals, leading to the development of new forms of vegetation that are adapted to withstand constant pressure from large herbivores. At the same time, carnivorous dinosaurs would maintain their role as top predators, influencing the distribution and behavior of other species within the ecosystem. As we reflect on the presence of these predators, it becomes evident that their continued existence would create environments where survival strategies are shaped by the need to avoid or coexist with them, leading to a wide range of adaptations among smaller organisms. The oceans and skies would also reflect this ongoing evolution, with marine reptiles and flying species continuing to develop over time, creating a world where ancient lineages remain present in every part of the environment. As one considers the global scale of these changes, it becomes clear that the Earth would feel both ancient and modern at the same time, with landscapes that are familiar in structure but inhabited by life forms that follow a different evolutionary history. The absence of a clear boundary between past and present creates a sense of continuity, where the age of dinosaurs does not end, but transforms into something new. As this develops, one begins to understand that the modern world in this alternate timeline would not be defined by the replacement of one group of organisms by another, but by the continued evolution of existing lineages, resulting in ecosystems that are both stable and dynamic. The presence of dinosaurs in this world would not be a return to the past, but a progression of it, creating a planet that is shaped by millions of years of uninterrupted development. As we continue to explore the idea of dinosaurs existing in a modern context, it becomes important to consider how their presence would influence not only natural ecosystems, but the overall structure and balance of life across the planet, creating a world where evolutionary continuity leads to unique and highly developed systems. The long-term coexistence of dinosaur species with changing environmental conditions suggests that these creatures would become highly specialized, with different species adapting to specific roles within their ecosystems, contributing to a level of complexity that reflects millions of years of uninterrupted evolution. As one considers this specialization, it becomes evident that the diversity of dinosaur species would extend far beyond what we understand from the fossil record, with forms that are adapted to environments ranging from dense forests to open plains, from coastal regions to high-altitude landscapes. This diversity would allow dinosaurs to occupy a wide range of ecological niches, creating ecosystems that are rich in variety and interconnectedness. As we reflect on this interconnectedness, it becomes clear that the relationships between species would become more complex over time, with each organism playing a role in maintaining the balance of the system. The absence of a major extinction event means that these relationships would develop gradually, allowing ecosystems to reach a level of stability that is supported by long-term adaptation rather than sudden change. As one considers the impact of this stability, it becomes apparent that ecosystems would be more resilient, capable of adjusting to environmental changes without undergoing complete reorganization. The presence of dinosaurs would also influence the way energy flows through these systems, as their size, behavior, and feeding patterns shape the distribution of resources across the environment. As we reflect on this flow of energy, it becomes evident that the structure of food chains would differ from those in our world, with dinosaurs occupying key positions that influence the movement of nutrients and energy. The role of smaller organisms would remain important, as they contribute to processes such as decomposition, pollination, and the cycling of nutrients, but their development would be shaped by the presence of dominant species. As one considers these interactions, it becomes clear that the balance of life in this world would be maintained through a network of relationships that have evolved over long periods, creating systems that are both stable and dynamic. The absence of human influence also means that these ecosystems would function without artificial disruption, allowing natural processes to shape the environment in a continuous and uninterrupted manner. As we reflect on this, it becomes evident that the planet would remain more closely aligned with its natural state, where changes occur gradually and are driven by environmental and biological factors rather than technological ones. The idea of a modern world filled with dinosaurs challenges our understanding of what modern means, suggesting that modernity is not defined by the presence of humans, but by the current state of evolution at any given time. As one considers this perspective, it becomes clear that the Earth in this alternate timeline would be just as advanced in its own way, shaped by millions of years of continuous development that have produced ecosystems of great complexity and balance. As we continue to reflect on this world, it becomes evident that the presence of dinosaurs in the modern era would not create a chaotic or unstable environment, but a deeply interconnected and highly evolved system, where life continues to adapt and thrive in ways that reflect its long and uninterrupted history. As one begins to reflect on the full scope of a world where dinosaurs never went extinct, it becomes evident that the most significant outcome is not simply the continued presence of these ancient creatures, but the complete transformation of the planet's identity over millions of years, resulting in a world that follows a fundamentally different path from the one we know. The absence of extinction does not freeze the past in place, but allows it to evolve continuously, shaping every aspect of life and environment in ways that gradually diverge from our own timeline. As we consider this divergence, it becomes clear that the Earth in this alternate reality would be defined by continuity rather than replacement, where ancient lineages persist and adapt instead of being erased and replaced by new ones. This continuity would influence not only the forms of life that exist, but also the relationships between them, creating ecosystems that are deeply rooted in their history while still evolving in response to changing conditions. As one reflects on this idea, it becomes apparent that the concept of ages of life, such as the age of mammals or the age of dinosaurs, would not exist in the same way, as there would be no clear transition between them. Instead, the age of dinosaurs would extend forward, blending into what we would consider the present, creating a world where the past is not separated from the present but integrated into it. The landscapes of this world would reflect this integration, with environments that have been shaped by millions of years of continuous interaction between life and the planet itself. Forests, plains, and coastal regions would all bear the marks of long-term influence from dinosaur species, with vegetation patterns, soil composition, and even the physical structure of the land shaped by their presence. As we consider these long-term effects, it becomes evident that the Earth would feel more consistent in its development, with fewer abrupt changes and more gradual transitions that allow systems to evolve smoothly over time. The oceans and skies would also reflect this continuity, with ancient lineages of marine and flying reptiles continuing to evolve, creating a world where these creatures remain an integral part of the environment. As one considers the global scale of these changes, it becomes clear that the entire planet would be unified by a shared evolutionary history that extends uninterrupted from the distant past to the present. The absence of humans further reinforces this sense of continuity, as the planet would not experience the rapid and often disruptive changes associated with human activity, allowing natural processes to shape the environment without interference. As we reflect on this, it becomes evident that the Earth would exist in a state that is both stable and dynamic, where change occurs gradually and is integrated into the existing system rather than disrupting it. The idea of a changed planet in this context does not refer to sudden transformation, but to the accumulation of countless small changes over time, each contributing to a larger pattern of evolution that defines the world. As one considers the depth of this transformation, it becomes clear that this alternate Earth would not simply be a variation of our own, but a fundamentally different world shaped by a unique set of conditions and processes. The continued presence of dinosaurs serves as a central element in this transformation, guiding the direction of life and influencing the development of ecosystems in ways that extend far beyond their immediate impact. As we continue to reflect on this world, it becomes evident that the absence of extinction would create a planet that is deeply connected to its past while still moving forward, resulting in an environment that is both ancient in origin and continuously evolving in form. As we continue to explore the idea of a planet forever changed, it becomes important to consider how the long-term continuity of life and environment would shape not only the physical and biological aspects of the Earth, but also the overall character and rhythm of the planet itself, creating a world that feels fundamentally different in its pace and progression. In our timeline, the history of Earth is marked by moments of disruption that reset ecosystems and create opportunities for new forms of life to emerge. But in this alternate world, those moments are replaced by a steady flow of change that unfolds gradually over millions of years. As one considers this difference, it becomes evident that the rhythm of life on this planet would be slower, more consistent, and less defined by sudden shifts, allowing ecosystems to develop a deeper level of stability and integration. This stability would not mean a lack of diversity or change, but rather a different kind of evolution, where complexity arises through the refinement of existing systems rather than the creation of entirely new ones. As we reflect on this idea, it becomes clear that the Earth would feel more continuous in its development, with fewer sharp boundaries between different periods of time and more gradual transitions that blend one stage into the next. The presence of dinosaurs throughout this entire timeline reinforces this sense of continuity, as their evolution provides a consistent thread that connects the past to the present. As one considers this unbroken lineage, it becomes apparent that the identity of the planet would be shaped by a long history of adaptation and interaction, creating a world that is deeply influenced by its origins while still capable of change. The absence of human influence further emphasizes this natural progression, as the planet would evolve according to its own internal dynamics rather than external intervention. As we reflect on this, it becomes evident that the Earth would maintain a balance that is guided by natural processes, where changes occur in response to environmental conditions rather than technological or cultural forces. The ecosystems of this world would continue to adapt to changes in climate, geography, and biological interaction, but they would do so in a way that preserves continuity and stability over time. As one considers the implications of this, it becomes clear that the planet would exist in a state that is both resilient and adaptable, capable of responding to change without losing its overall structure. The idea of a forever changed Earth, therefore, is not one of chaos or instability, but of a different kind of order, where the absence of extinction allows for the development of systems that are deeply interconnected and highly refined. As we continue to reflect on this world, it becomes evident that the most profound difference lies not in any single feature, but in the overall direction of evolution, which has been shaped by continuity rather than disruption. This direction creates a planet that is both familiar and unfamiliar, where the processes of life and environment follow patterns that are recognizable, but lead to outcomes that are entirely different from our own. As one considers this final image, it becomes clear that a world where dinosaurs never went extinct is not simply an alternate version of Earth, but a unique and fully realized reality, shaped by millions of years of uninterrupted evolution, where the past is never left behind, but continues to evolve into the present and beyond. As we reflect on the idea of a world where dinosaurs never went extinct, it becomes clear that this is not just a simple change in the past, but a complete transformation of everything that followed. The Earth we know today, shaped by extinction, adaptation, and the rise of new life forms, would have taken a very different path. One where ancient giants continued to evolve, ecosystems remained deeply connected to their origins, and the balance of life followed a slower, more continuous rhythm. As one considers this alternate world, it becomes evident that evolution is not a fixed journey, but a series of possibilities shaped by moments of change, both sudden and gradual. The disappearance of dinosaurs in our timeline opened the door for new forms of life, including ourselves, but without that moment, the story of Earth would have unfolded in ways that are both fascinating and unfamiliar. A world still ruled by dinosaurs would not simply be more dangerous or more dramatic. It would be a world shaped by continuity, where the past is never replaced, only transformed. As we reflect on this journey, it becomes clear that understanding these possibilities allows us to better appreciate the path our own planet has taken. The world we live in today is the result of countless events, each shaping the direction of life in ways that are often difficult to imagine. If you found this exploration interesting and want to continue discovering more what-if scenarios and deep dives into Earth's history, make sure to subscribe and stay connected for more.